Glorious day, fellow traveler. Welcome to Science and God with Dr. G. That's me, Dr. Michael Gillen, physicist, astronomer, mathematician, and Christian. That's right, living, breathing evidence that science and Christianity are not mortal enemies, but good friends. Actually, an awesome power couple. The other day I received a message from a fellow traveler named Matthew. Earlier this year he lost his beautiful young wife to an illness, and it left him with their 3 young children. Matthew wrote, "Dr. G, I know you believe in God, but do you believe in an afterlife?" I told him I'd answer his question in a podcast, and that I'd dedicate that podcast to his sweet wife, Jen. So that's exactly what I'm doing right now. Matthew and Jen, this one is for you. You know, a few years ago, physicist Stephen Hawking explained why he did not believe in life after death. Your brain is like a computer, he said, so when it breaks down, man, the party's over for you. Quote, "There is no heaven or afterlife for broken down computers. That's a fairy story for people afraid of the dark." Unquote. There are many flaws with Hawking's assertion, but I'll just mention 3 real quickly. First, yes, your brain is like a computer in that it uses electrical impulses to operate, but that's where the similarity ends. Your brain is not a machine created by humans and programmed by humans to do what humans want. Your brain is a 3-pound organic miracle whose origins and full capabilities are still shrouded in mystery after all these years. We don't understand it. You know, a toddler's brain, for example, a toddler's brain has more intelligence, more creativity, more free will than all the world's most powerful supercomputers put together. It's preposterous to compare a human brain with a computer. All right? Second, you're more than just your brain. You also have a non-material spirit. It's what connects you with God. And it's the source of your SQ, or spiritual intelligence. Remember, I discussed that back in journey number 7. Spirit and spiritual intelligence is unique to the human species. So any credible hypothesis about life after death has to explain what happens to your spirit when you die. And third, science itself has discovered that there's way more to the universe than meets the eye. I talked about that in journey number 9. So honestly, the only fairy story here is Hawking's simple-minded, mechanistic worldview. All right, which brings me to today's topic. One of the most astonishing things that science has discovered about the universe is this. Whenever a self-contained system undergoes any kind of change, even a radical change, invariably something about it, something sacred about it, does not change. We call that unchanging sacred thing a conserved quantity. All right, here are 2 quick examples. Number 1, first suppose a computer blows up into a million pieces, okay, kaboom. One thing that survives that explosion is total energy. If you add up all the energies of all the pieces afterward, it will total exactly the amount of energy you had initially in the computer. All right? It's as if the universe considers total energy to be something sacred. And so it's a conserved quantity. It survives the death of the computer. Okay, second example. Suppose 2 atoms collide, all right, and create a shower of particles, okay, subatomic particles. One thing that survives that death, that survives that collision, is total electric charge. Okay, so if you add up the electric charges of all the subatomic particles afterward, they will equal the same amount of electric charge you had initially in the atoms. All right? Again, it's like the universe considers total electric charge somehow sacred, and so it is a conserved quantity. Now, what I'm describing to you, my friend, is not just some geeky factoid. Please. This is an absolute truth about how our universe works. It's a big deal. So let me repeat it. Listen carefully. Nothing ever disappears without a trace. Nothing ever goes away completely. Something about the system, something sacred, always survives its death. Always. It's always conserved. Now, sometimes that conserved quantity can be simple and obvious, like what I just talked about. Total energy, total electric charge, there's also total momentum, and so forth. But sometimes the conserved quantity in question is more mysterious than that. For example, in certain quantum mechanical systems, something called parity is conserved. There's also something called baryon number and lepton number. Okay, so given all this, given what we've discovered about how the universe works, it's entirely reasonable for you to ask right now, okay, Dr. G, then what happens to me when I die? Good question. Scientifically speaking, let's stick with the science, you on your deathbed qualify as a self-contained system undergoing a radical change. In fact, death is the most radical change you'll ever experience, right? Even more than your birth. It's like the exploding computer or the colliding atoms. It's the death of the computer, the death of the atoms. Now it's the death of you. So what happens to you when you die, given what we understand from science about how the universe works? You know, when you die, your breathing, your heartbeat, your brain waves, they all stop permanently. And your good looks and your highly toned muscles and your body, they all decay. But according to science, again, we're still with the science, but according to science, certain sacred things about you will survive and live on. They're conserved quantities. Among them are your total energy and your total electric charge. You know, back in 1907, there was a doctor in Massachusetts named Duncan McDougall. Don't you just love that name? Duncan McDougall. And he tested the idea that your soul is a conserved quantity, that your soul lives on after your death, all right? And so what he did, it's actually quite clever, is that he put dying patients on beds that were attached to scales, very sensitive weight scales, and he weighed them as they died. A little gruesome, but that's science for you. And what he discovered, or what he concluded anyway, is that, number one, the soul does survive your death, and number two, the human soul weighs about, 21 grams, which is about 3/4 of an ounce. Now, before you start deluging me with messages, no one takes McDougall's experiments seriously anymore, okay? But today there are many scientists who do believe that your consciousness is a conserved quantity, that it lives on after you die. And they surmise that from experiments on people who are pronounced clinically dead and then come back to life, right? That's still provocative, still controversial, but there are scientists who believe that, all right, and who point to that evidence. All right, so now, as for the Bible, it agrees with science. Certain quantities do survive death. Chief among them, in your case, and in my case, is spirit. Now, I know spirit sounds very woo-woo and mysterious, but honestly speaking, spirit is no more mysterious than energy when it comes right down to it. And it's certainly not more mysterious than parity or baryon number, a lepton number. In fact, spirit behaves a whole lot like energy. According to science, energy is indestructible. You cannot destroy energy. And by the way, you can't create it either. Right? And likewise, the Bible says that about the Spirit. Spirit is something you can't destroy, and you also can't create. Only God can do that. Now also, science says that energy is something you can only change from one form to another. You can't destroy it, you can't create it, but you can change it from one form to another. So for example, a chunk of wood. Wood is a solid, fibrous form of energy that helps support a tree. Right? That's what it is, essentially. But by burning it, you can change it into heat, which is an invisible, radiant form of energy that you can use to warm your house. Now, wood and heat look and behave very differently, but according to science, they're essentially one and the same thing. Energy. This mysterious thing we call energy, and we really don't even understand what energy is, even though we talk about it all the time. When it comes right down to it, we do not know in science what energy is exactly. We can identify its various forms, but we can't tell you what it is essentially, all right? So spirit is not more mysterious than energy. Now, according to the Bible, the same is true about spirit. You can't destroy it, you can't create it, but you can change it. Spirit can change its form from one to another. So when you die, your spirit isn't just going to leave your body and fly away. According to the Bible, your spirit instantly changes from your earthly body to what's called your heavenly body, which, if you think about it, is no more crazy than wood changing into heat. Come on. All right. So this epic transformation is one that all of us are going to experience one day. You, me, everybody. Every human being on planet Earth is going to experience this epic transformation of spirit we call death. Okay? Now listen to how it's described in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Quote, "But let me reveal to you a wonderful secret. We will all be transformed. For our dying bodies must be transformed into bodies that will never die. Our mortal bodies must be transformed into immortal bodies." Unquote. Mortal bodies changing into immortal bodies. The Bible says that's the transformation we experience when we quote unquote die. Friend, the message from science and the Bible is crystal clear. Believing in life after death has absolutely nothing to do whether you're afraid of the dark. And it's certainly not a fairy story. Believing in life after death is based on understanding an absolute truth about how the universe works. An absolute truth that is affirmed by both science and the Bible. Believing in life after death is based on understanding that what we call death is not an annihilation. It's not the end of everything for all time. It's a profound transformation from one form of existence to another. Believing in life after death is based on an understanding that the universe is wired for life. Wired by a creator whose spirit breathes within you this very minute. A living, breathing spirit that's sacred, conserved, and indestructible. Okay, that's it for now. Remember, this podcast is not a lecture series. It's a conversation. So now it's your turn. Comments? Questions? I'm eager to hear from you. There's all kinds of ways you can connect up with me via my social media links in the show notes below. Till next time, I'm still Dr. G saying, I love science, I love God, I also love you, my fellow traveler. Thanks for listening.